do it. Yep. Audio, good. Okay, cool. Welcome. Oh, we have followers. Huh. Game Manning. His name is Fred. Actually, get rid of my yeah, we're gonna add some cool sound effects and other effects and UI. Wow. Gonna do some random generation as well. Let's move this out the way. Well, I guess this is everyone for now. So I'll just start. Alrighty. So picking up where we left off before, we had our player movement script that controlled how the player would move and how would we be able to control the snail. We had our components that were attached to our player, and we accessed those rigid bodies, that rigid body, using the input to adjust the velocity. And then we also had our little leaf script, which simply would destroy itself when colliding with the player. Okay, I was recording it, but I wasn't streaming it. That's okay. Start off from here. So yeah. So last time we went through and we wrote these two scripts here. Don't worry about this one. This was one I was messing around with. So we have our leaf and player movement. We all put this in the one scene. But now we are going to get our to get these leaves, we want to make them have a bit of feedback when we collect them. So what we're going to do, we're going to if I just delete all these leaves, oops, sorry, wrong one, and just leave the one leaf here and go to sound, audio source, and I'll select the audio source that came with the package. I'll also make sure play on awake is unticked. What that usually does is when the scene starts, it'll play our sound effect. So this sound effect is just a simple munch sound for our snail as he consumes the leaf. So if we open up our leaf script, what we are going to do is have it Did I mess up? I think I might have messed up. Okay, this is fine. We will do it this way. We are going to have in our start function here. Oops, don't worry about that. Audio source. I'm going to do the same thing we did earlier. I'm going to get the component on our leaf, and then probably name it something better like audio source. And now, okay, that's not going to work. Okay, now I remember why I did it that way. Okay, scratch that. I'll cut that out. Oh, everyone's here. Okay. Welcome. Alright, I'm still trying to get through. Let me check back to what I did. Okay. I'll do it the original way. So, instead of doing the audio source directly from the leaf, I'm going to get another script to handle that for us. I'm just going to call it Game Manager. I'm going to make a new object, Game Manager here. And then I'm just going to drag and drop our script onto here. And in our Game Manager, we're going to have what's called a singleton, which just means that we can only have a single. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Sorry. Let me just fix this. It means we can only have a single type of these. Let me just fix my static instance, Game Manager instance. So we only have one instance of this value. And with this, we're going to have a couple of fields. So the first field we want is just a copy of our leaf. And then we are going to have in our start function a simple check if we're the only if this is the only game manager, and if it's not, then we'll just get rid of it because we want to ensure that there is only one, and otherwise we will set the instance to this. This just means whatever object is currently the game manager. Also going to be storing a audio source. Which will be collecting sounds for the collection sounds. Okay. And now I'm just going to make a little function here. So this is our own custom function, separate to the ones we've seen so far, like start and update. This is so that we can do things on top of our play here. So this is so that we can call our game manager to do specific things. Oh no, it renamed itself. I messed up the name here. Let's just fix that. And then this should refresh. Okay, good. There we go. So now if we go back to our Leaf script, and just before we destroy, I want to do game manager dot instance dot collect. Oops. Should be dot collect Leaf. So this should be the same as this function here. So what's going to happen, hopefully, is that when we go and collect our leaf, it'll play a little sound effect. Now, make sure my script is properly assigned here. Go audio source, sorry, as we were doing earlier, audio clip. We use the collect clip. Make sure play and awake is not selected. Then now when we go up to our incredibly far away leaf, it should play a little sound. I currently have my audio muted and I don't think you can hear through Discord, but if you guys have done it, you'll probably hear that crunching sound, and if it's a bit loud, you can turn down the volume on the audio source, something like 0.6. So from here, now we have a leaf that's going to be making a noise when we collect it. And we probably want to make this a little more interesting than just going to a single leaf. So we're going to have these randomly generate around. So the first thing we want to do is make sure our leaf object here is set as a prefab, and the way to do that is simply just to I'll just delete that, show you. Easiest way to do that is just to click and drag it into our project view from our hierarchy view. Is everyone okay so far? Does it make sense? Tell me if I'm going a bit fast as well. Yeah. That's good. Cool. Yeah. So we've set this as a prefab, and just like the level prefab we had before, this means that we can have multiple copies of it if we want, without having it needing to exist in the scene. So it's like we're saving a collection of components together in settings. Actually, we don't need this audio source anymore. And if you change things on a prefab and you want those settings to apply to all prefabs, you can just apply. Yeah, if you're using 2019 Unity onwards. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So back to our game manager. This is where we'll be doing our random generation. And we're just going to do a very simple version of this. So what we want in our random generation, we need something that will keep track of the time between each leaf generation, because we don't want them spawning every frame, so we'll have some value to store that. So if I go something like float, and remember float is a way for us to store decimals. Seconds till next spawn equals 0f, and this is just 0 for floats. Now what we can do in our update function, we go down and we check if our seconds until the next spawn is less than 0, then it means that I know we've counted down further than we're past 0 and it's time to spawn something. Wait. Yeah, sorry. Less than. So in this case, we are going to reset to 0. Actually, sorry. We'll reset to some value. 4 seconds seems okay. And then otherwise, if this is greater than 0, we're going to have this. We're going to set it to the previous seconds minus delta time. So now what delta time is, it's just the difference between this frame and the last frame. So if it was 0.1 seconds between this frame and the last frame, and delta time will be 0.1. Hang on, I'm going to just change that. So we're going to have our spawn functionality over here in another separate function, but this time we're going to keep it private, whereas this one was public. The difference between that is that the public functions will allow you to call them anywhere, whereas the private ones you can only call it within this little script. And since we're only concerned about spawning the leaf right here, you will just call it inside here. And we'll leave it private. So for our position of where we're going to spawn it, our X position will be somewhere between, if we do random.range, maybe 15. You can see if this number is good. So this will give us an X coordinate between -15 and 15, and then we'll do one for our Y position as well. But this time we'll make it slightly smaller because our screen height is smaller than the width. And we'll also give it a little bit extra by changing the rotation of the leaf, so we don't have the same leaf over and over. I'm just going to go from -360 to +360. And now we'll just combine those positions into a vector. And then we'll use that vector as our new position. So first thing we want to put in this instantiate function is our leaf prefab that we made. So this value here, we're going to copy it with this instantiate function, and we put in our position. Now we need to do our rotation. Now this one's a bit weird because we have to use what's known as quaternion. Don't have to understand it, it's just know that this is for making rotations, and this is probably the easiest way for us to do that. So vector3.forward times z rotation, and this line here will just set the rotation. Okay, now we have to call this function every time we want to spawn something. So here we'll just write spawn leaf, open bracket, close bracket, and semicolon. Now inside your game manager, make sure you select the leaf from your prefabs and drag it over, and we'll just get rid of the leaf in our scene. So yeah, if you have a look at the game manager, leaf, make sure it's there. We'll give this a quick try. So let me just speed him up a bit. Alright. So we have a leaf spawning every 4 seconds now. Very good. And you can see their rotation is changed. Sorry, did someone say something? Oh, thank you. Is our mascot technically. Okay. One thing you've probably noticed with the snail as well is that when we're moving left and right, it's kind of staying the same direction. Now, it'd probably be good if we fixed that as well. So if we go back to our player movement script, we can adjust this fairly simply. We'll just change snail direction. Right. So we're going to just check now if we are moving right. We want our sprite, our sprite renderer, sprite renderer, we want this and so we want to get our sprite renderer, to flip our X position, sorry, our flipped state, true. But if we're moving left, we don't want that to happen. So now with this simple change, and make sure you have these two, we'll see our snail now flips as well. Nope. Sorry. Make sure that's an else if. Otherwise, when it's 0, it's gonna keep flipping back. Yep. So, does everyone who's following along have that? We have any issues so far? Any compiler errors or warnings? I assume that's okay then? Okay. I will move on. Okay. So now that we have our snail flipping and we have our leaves spawning, I'm going to add a little bit of a UI to this. So just a little user interface telling us what our score is. So I'm going to go right click on our hierarchy view. I'm going to select UI and text. Give it a minute. And I'm going to call this score. So right now you see it's in the middle of the screen. We probably want to move it somewhere off to the corner, out of the way. So let me just keep that text there for reference. Let's move it to this top right corner. The easiest way for us to do that is just changing the position somewhere around here. Oops. Also making sure that we are aligned to the right side, so that when we add any more text, it comes from that side and not that side. Yep. Let's just increase font and make it bold. Maybe increase the font more. If you see your text disappearing when you increase the font size, it's likely because of either overflow, well, the text overflow set to truncate. As if you see in our scene view, that this is the UI box. And that when our font gets too big, it kind of wraps over it. So the easiest way is just to change this from truncate to overflow. But it's also good to make sure that the size of this box is appropriate. So something like that. So that's bigger than our text. And maybe set it something bigger, like, yeah. Okay. So now if we go back to our game manager, we already have this collect leaf function that gets called when we collect a leaf. So we can use that to keep track of our score. I'm just going to add a variable here for our score. Call it leaves collected. And that's just going to start out at 1. And since we're not really concerned about decimals, I'm going to have this value as an integer, just so we don't have any trailing decimal points or any of that. So in our collect leaf function, I'm going to increment our leaves, and this just means the same as if I were to write collected plus 1. So this is just the same as that. Yeah, as you can see, it's a lot easier than typing out this all again. So we also want to be able to display a score. For that, we're going to use our serialized field again. And we're going to store a UI score. UI score. Now currently this doesn't exist, and we want to make this as a new class. and you'll probably get this error down here. So let's just make that new script, UI score. Going to have another component that will be attached to the score. This will be a separate object that we attach to our UI that we made earlier. I'm going to make another public function here so that we can update our score. New score. I'm just going to update the text and the text part of the text, which is a bit funny. We want to change it to a string, and a string just means text in this case, similar to how we have number types like integer and float. To store a string, to store text, we use what's called a string. So now if we drag and drop the UI score onto here, we look at the game manager. Can it be found? Okay. So for this one, we actually need to add an additional library for UI, I believe. That should work, yep. So yeah, this is just for the UI score, you don't need it for anyone else. So to make sure you can access the UI text, as there could be many different types of texts in different various circumstances. So if we just drag and drop our score onto here, fills it out. Actually, there's one more thing. For that to be able to work, we need UI score dot update score, which is just the function we wrote earlier, and we're going to pass in that leaves collected right there. Ooh. Okay. Now, if we run up to our leaves, you can see that, just turn that off, this number is going upwards. Very cool. Another thing you might have noticed there is that when it maximized, it kind of stayed in the middle. And that's just because we haven't anchored it to the right corner. Now if we do that, we collect that, yep, there we go. Correct position. We have all our UI connected. So does anyone need any help with that? Does anyone have any? worries. Thanks for coming. Okay. Okay, well, we'll just... Oh, Chip saying something? Is this using accessing text? Yeah. So that was accessing the text on UI. We also went through randomly generating the leaves, and that is just part of this here. Okay. So I'm gonna go on to doing some small effects for the leaf. And this is a bit of a extension thing as to what you can do with Unity. So we're gonna make the leaf just change color over time to indicate like how long the leaf has left, and just adding a lifetime to it. So we're gonna just add our sprite renderer again. At this time we're going to have a field for a gradient. So what this gradient is going to do, we're going to go over each color over its lifetime and change the color of the sprite so that it matches a color from that gradient. So if we have a gradient from red to blue, the leaf will change from red and slowly to blue. So we're going to go call start here. Actually, we're not going to use start this time because the leaf will not be created when the start of the game happens. So we have to use onEnable. To do so, I'm going to make a little constant value that we can't change just for the lifetime of each leaf. If I do it something like 20, and we have current elapsed time for how long the leaf has been alive, we'll set our elapsed time 0. Make sure our sprite renderer is set. And then in our update function, we're going to check if our elapsed time is greater than our max lifetime. Oh, sorry. We're checking if it's less than our max lifetime, so we're checking if it's still alive. If still alive. And then make our elapsed time divided by our max lifetime is the percentage of the life that we have left. And we are just going to add this to our time.delta time again. Now we're going to change our sprite color to match what it's going to be on the gradient. Gradient dot evaluate, and we'll pass in our percentage right here. But then when we've exceeded our max lifetime, we want to simply destroy the object without giving any points or playing any sound effects. So if we give that a go into Unity, now when you destroy text arguments, sorry, I need to put in our game object. And now if we go to our leaf in our prefab, if we change the gradient to, let's say we start off with a nice green color like this we had before, and we're gonna end on maybe like a dark brown, and oops, what's happening here? Have it like orange in the middle. Yep. I just refresh that. Should show up. Okay, well, let's make that maybe like a lighter orange color. Now, if we do that, start our game, you can see these leaves slowly turning orange. All the way to like a brown color. And disappears once it reaches its end. Okay. All right. So that is pretty much everything that we have for, I guess, the intro to Unity. Just a quick recap. So our scripts in Unity that we made, we had one for moving the player, and one for keeping track of, well, we had one for displaying the score, we had one for the behavior of the leaf, we had a script for our game state and spawning our leaves. Yeah, and this one was a little extra one, don't need to worry about. But yeah, thank you guys for showing up, and if you have any questions, feel free to throw them my way, or if you want to go back through it afterwards, we have the questions channel. Yeah, and I'll be uploading this along with part 1 later on this week or today if I get around to it. So yeah, any questions?